What is up, everybody? Clint Lamb with Cover Crimson, sitting here with Cotton with Waaay Offsides. I guess, is that the name of the channel, Waaay Offsides?
Yeah, Waaay with 4 A's.
Yeah, Waaay with 4 A's. Oh, I like that.
Always.
I like that. I've been on your show a couple of times, got a lot of respect for the work you guys do. Thought with Alabama it being National Signing Day, we'd get you on here. I know you talk a lot of recruiting, you talk a lot of Alabama football, so thought we'd kind of switch it up a little bit and maybe hash out some of this recruiting stuff that's going on. First of all, I guess we'll start with, the fact that they're not number one or number two. I think right now Rivals has them at number 4. Excuse me. 24/7 Sports has them at number 4. Rivals has them at number 6. Still very respectable. And I think a lot of that has to do with class size. But kind of what are your initial thoughts on the class? We'll start there, and then we'll kind of start diving into the weeds a little bit.
Yeah, you said it to start off. A lot of it's got to do with the class size. Right now, you've got USC has 35 commits. What they're going to do with 35 commits, it's beyond me. But in terms of Alabama, Courtney Morgan was on Yay Alabama today, and he made some comments. He kind of dove into this deep, and I had a lot of respect for what he said. And he talked about Alabama's NIL fund and how he, as a general manager, he looks at it. He would rather use the NIL fund more towards retention as opposed to paying a high school player more money than a guy who is playing on Saturdays in Tuscaloosa is making. And I got a lot of respect for that. And I think that they understood, look, Alabama is not poor by any means, but let's not pretend like we've got, 2,000 millionaires that have graduated from there that are giving the school a ton of money. So NIL funds are they're not limitless. So they have to be smart about it. And in doing that, I think that they found what they were looking for. The guys that really fit what they needed. There are some position groups that I don't think were addressed great this cycle. I'm sure we'll get into that. But when you look at what they did last year and what they did this year, and you really take a step back and look at Nick Saban retired, right? You finish with, where did they finish last year? Number 6 class, number 4 class, something like that.
No, I want to say they finished with like number 2 in high school recruiting, 2 or 3.
Yeah,
was up there.
Right. And then right now you're going to finish between 6 and 4. That is, that's pretty solid work, man. It's really solid work when you're looking at a staff that's replaced Nick Saban and come in and I think they're looking at quality over quantity here. Kalen DeBoer said it today. They're not going to, they're not going to go sign 25 plus recruits. They don't want to do that because they want to allocate their NIL to retention, which is why we didn't lose anybody in the spring. I think it's a great approach, man. I think it's pretty strategic, and I think it's going to work out.
Yeah, I loved that conversation that they had today too. I completely agree. Like, the emphasis on retention, and then you start looking at like the freshmen, the high school guys that you're going to be bringing in. And it's like there's a mix of, okay, we think this guy can help us immediately. Some of these guys are developmental guys. There's certain positions, offensive line, defensive line. Typically, you're not going to have a lot of guys step on campus and immediately start contributing at those positions. There's a little bit of development that needs to be made. Quarterback positions, typically another one. So they'll get developmental pieces, but it's more so like Taden Kawa is kind of the perfect example. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Jet Tomla probably needs some seasoning, and the fact that he's stepping up in competition, a massive step up considering where he played high school and everything. I guess you can make the argument for both, but the idea of Taden Kawa was not going to be some kind of massive, expensive quarterback that, kind of broke the bank. It's a guy that you love the tools. You trust your coaching staff to develop those tools, and you bring them in, and then hopefully that player is not expecting, hey, I'm a 3-star, but I'm stepping on campus and I want to play in year 1 or in year 2, bare minimum, or I'm leaving. You hope that player understands, hey, you're kind of a developmental guy. There's some rawness to your game, but we're going to put you in a position by the time you're a junior, senior, whatever, where maybe you can really take that next step and maybe make yourself some money on the NFL level as well. Like, I think there's a good balance there, but you do need to have those guys who are going to come in and pop. And some of those guys, at least to me, obviously Xavier Crowell is kind of the number 1 for a lot of people. Jaira Edwards is another one. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about him, but I want to start with Crowell because what Alabama's missing with its run game right now, a lot of it, the vision, the power, the burst, the home run hitting ability, Like the fact that this guy is so creative, good short area burst, just a lot of traits that you look for at the position. Right now with the offensive line kind of struggling a little bit as far as sustaining or maintaining blocks. The running backs aren't always seeing it. The ones who can see it, do they have that home run hitting ability? Like Xavier Crowell can really alleviate some of those problems. And so, I mean, like that's the type of player that despite the fact that he's younger, I would fully expect him to come in and pretty much make an impact from day one.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think when you look at him in his playing style, not necessarily his size, but his playing style, AK Deer kind of fits the same mold, that explosiveness and stuff like that. And so, I do think that those are some of the guys that could come in and make a year one kind of impact, especially with the way Alabama's running game is going to be. Now, my take on this has been in 2026, I expect Alabama's running game to be more similar to what we're used to, just because I still think the offensive line is in flux between what it used to be and what it wants to be under Kalen DeBoer. I think I have talked to you about this before, but they're still trying to find those guys that really fit the offensive line that Kalen DeBoer needs to run his offense. So I think a guy like Xavier Crowell, he's got all the tools to succeed, man. He's going to be really hard to keep off the field, really, really hard to keep off the field. And then, if we're being honest, there's a pretty good chance Bama might lose a back or two to the portal. So he's going to get his opportunity early, I think. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And when you look at the running back room, I mean, obviously you're definitely losing Jam Miller. You're definitely losing Draylon Washington. And so then it becomes, okay, it's possible you could lose a running back, as you mentioned. Right now they're sitting with 5, I guess. Ja'Vari Barnett. Did he ever officially decommit or?
Yeah, he signed with Illinois today.
Yeah, okay. I know that he was expected to, but I wasn't sure if he actually ended up doing that. That's one that like kind of fell through the cracks. But right now you only got 5 backs. I know they want 6, and when you start looking at the fact that Kevin Riley's banged up, Jam Miller's banged up, Daniel Hill has been banged up this season. Xavier Crowell is going to be a younger player. I do think he's going to be able to step up and really help your rotation, maybe even become a starter or featured piece. Not saying that's necessarily going to happen, but I'm saying he's got that kind of talent. It's like you don't want to rely too much on youth necessarily. I feel like if Nick Saban was still running the show, even though they have a lot of talented bodies in there and you really like the makeup of that room, assuming that you don't lose too much to the portal, I still feel like Nick Saban probably would go out and get a veteran guy, someone that's got the experience. You saw him do it with Jahmyr Gibbs. You've seen him do it multiple times while he was the coach. But like the offense, when you start to look at it, I love CD Morgan, him bringing that size element, that ball winning ability, really physical, just a physical marvel, and his ability to not only be a massive body at like 6'4", 220-ish pounds, but the ability to climb the ladder and go get the football, but also be a player who, as Kalen DeBoer said on that show today, I mean, he's a guy who can play inside, he can play outside, he can, the screen game, he can be a part of that. He can create some yardage after the catch. Like this guy kind of brings that completeness that you look for at the position. Now he's kind of fallen a little bit down the recruiting rankings. It's not bad. I mean, I think he's number 44 overall, but he was a 5-star. But like that type of player, he fits the mold. Xavier Crowell having the ability to thrive in a lot of different blocking schemes, power and zone schemes, do all those things. Really think he's going to help Alabama's run game. But as you start going down, like Max Sutter, like that's a guy who brings the completeness. He's got the athletic profile that you look for, but he's also got the frame to carry more weight. He can be an inline Y. He can be an H move. And what Alabama has right now with Caleb Edwards and Marshall Pritchett, you love that as well. I mean, this offense right now, with the way that it's currently set up, you kind of alluded to it a little bit. You're still kind of having some transition as far as what Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb really want in this group, and maybe what they have from a body type perspective, especially along the offensive line. But from a skill position standpoint, like not only are they getting impact from players, when they're evaluating well, at the skill positions,
absolutely,
but also, you're continuing to recruit at a level where maybe you can continue to sustain that a little bit, despite the fact that you're still working with the offensive line.
Sure, absolutely. And to your point, the evaluations here is something that not a lot of people are talking about. They probably don't know. Most people probably don't know what goes into evaluating this talent, but Coach DeBoer brought up Nick Sheridan's evaluation of Jet Tamala today and kind of praised him for that. But look no further than like Latsier Brooks. Latsier Brooks has been fantastic this year. He comes in as a 3-star wide receiver. We all knew. I'll be honest, I didn't know the name before he started getting talked about in the Bama circles, and I go and look at him and like, this guy's not a 3-star. Like, he's not a 3-star. And so, man, this staff, and again, quality over quantity, their ability to evaluate. They don't need 30 plus guys.
That's right.
If they can, keep their roster intact like they did in the spring, they don't need 30 plus guys in a class because what they're bringing in fit the mold so well. And like I said, I think that's a little bit why the offense has looked a little wonky at points this season, is just because you're still in that limbo, in between Alabama of the past and Alabama of the future. But man, you brought up Sadarian Morgan. I agree, man. I think there's so many things you're going to be able to do with him offensively. Obviously, this Kalen DeBoer offense likes size in their wide receivers. We figured that out very early in the recruiting cycle last time around when they started looking at Derek Meadows and guys like that. So, yeah, I think, man, this class is a big success. A lot of folks are going to look at the rankings and be, why aren't we finishing with the number 2, number 1 class? Like, that's not college football anymore, man. Like, I do think Bama will go to the portal to supplement this class, and I think that's how you do it. I absolutely think that's probably the most efficient approach right now, and they've got it down to a science. Hearing Courtney Morgan today talk about that, I don't know, man. I was like, I need to go back and reevaluate my own personal budget now, because that guy knows what he's doing. So, but yeah, you're spot on, Clint.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, first of all, to think about like the quarterback evaluations, the fact they did it 2 years in a row. Yeah. Keelan Russell being a guy who, ended up being a 5-star player, was only a 3-star when they really got in on him and started recruiting him. Jet Tamala, being a, I want to say at one point, like he was ranked, he was a 4-star, but he was ranked like outside the top 200, and he's really climbed. I mean, currently right now, Rivals has him as the number 71 overall player and the 7th ranked quarterback in this class. And you actually look at like what he brings to the table. He brings the size, he brings the mobility. He really hadn't been asked to do a whole lot with his legs on the high school level, but certainly has the ability to escape and extend and maybe, take off and do some things with his legs. He's certainly not a dynamic runner. But, I wouldn't say that he's necessarily got like an elite arm, but he's got the ability to make all the throws. He can throw the football down the field with touch and accuracy. I think that's a big part of his game. And what I've been really impressed with was the ability to kind of improve in the intermediate parts of the field. The ball placement and accuracy had kind of been spotty with him early in some of the tape that I'd seen. The latest stuff, it's like, man, he's really made strides. He's layering throws. He's understanding. He's anticipating. It's like you see that. You see what they had or what they ended up with Keelan Russell, and they're way ahead of the curve. Like, I think one of the things that helped Alabama land Tamala is the fact that they were in super early with him. And, that's something that, like, you really start going down the board. And as you mentioned, it's not just the quarterback position. And I want to hear your thoughts on the quarterbacks, certainly if you have any, but also like a Xavier Crowell, 5-star running back, Sadarian Morgan, top 50 recruit at wide receiver, Max Sutter, a guy who is just outside the top 100. And then we'll get into the offensive line in a minute, because I think that there's some intrigue there. And I also think the transfer portal is going to be an element of this once that rolls around. But like, you start actually breaking it down position by position, and you compare what they're bringing in compared to what they're losing, and it all really makes sense. They didn't need to bring in a bunch of guys. At this point, I mean, right now, with the way things look, and you might lose some guys to the transfer portal, you can certainly address it if you need to, but like Sadarian Morgan, you're only losing for sure Jeremy Bernard after this season. So it's a one in, it's a one out. I just really like how this staff is kind of set up this recruiting, as far as, like, as you said, focus on the retention, keeping your own guys, keeping them happy, but then also being able to evaluate and not only evaluate, but then the development side of things. And that can be the 5-stars with the, what should be bigger egos. It could be the 3-star players like a London Simmons, who's not expecting a ton. This coaching staff's ability to kind of hit all levels and not only evaluate, but develop, I think has been absolutely huge. But what are your thoughts on these quarterbacks, man? Because I think that you got 2 pretty good ones. And when you look at the room as a whole, we don't know if Ty Simpson's leaving. But we don't know if someone else will transfer, one of those other two guys. But at the same time, I think that they're doing a really good job of at least replenishing some of that depth. And I love the fact they signed two.
Yeah, I do too. Kalen DeBoer said today that they want, the ideal situation is to have 5 at all times. Right now, they do, or they will. It remains to be seen. I know the talk in the offseason is going to be Keelan Russell versus Austin Mack, assuming Ty leaves, which as far as I'm concerned, I feel like that's a safe bet. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But what I find interesting, and I don't know as much about Taden Kawa as I do Tomala. We had Jet on our show and did an interview with him. And first and foremost, man, that kid is amazing. He sat there, and I didn't hold back. I asked him, I was like, look, man, like, why Alabama? Like, what our quarterback room looks like why Alabama? And he just says, hey, I want to compete with the best because that's the only way I can be the best version of myself. Kalen DeBoer echoed those sentiments today. I think that does something pretty cool. It's easy when you're a quarterback at Alabama to get into Tuscaloosa and to kind of get in this, this vibe, this big man on campus mentality, but when you got a guy like Tomala coming in who is nipping at your heels, it's going to force me to perform better or, at a higher level. And that's exactly why Jet wants to be there, because he feels like the quarterback room at Alabama now can help him perform at a higher level and vice versa. You're going to lose somebody, probably, most likely, somewhere along the lines. It may not be this year, it may be next year. But going and getting 2 guys shores up the quarterback room, and they're going to have several capable guys. The future looks really bright at that position for Alabama. I was a little shocked with Tomlin because I thought they'd go after somebody who's a little more mobile. Obviously, they're looking at Elijah Haven in the 2027 class. We'll see if he starts looking back towards LSU since they've went and gotten Lane Kiffin now. That's a whole nother thing. But anyway, but in there, LSU's making a push for Landon Duckworth. So, that may impact that decision down the road too. But Alabama's, the rich get richer at the quarterback position. I think you brought up Jet and kind of his progression over his senior year. He had like a 72% completion rating. And a lot of that are those balls you're talking about, those layered throws and things like that he progressively got better at over the season. What did he throw for 3,500 yards, something like that?
Yeah,
insane stuff, man. And he was only playing half a games, like just insane guy. I think you give him 2 years in this system and then give him the reins. He'll definitely compete for a playoff.
Well, speaking of like earlier, Courtney Morgan going on the recruiting show and talking about things. I did take one quote down just because I thought it was interesting, and I would love to sit down. We have an idea, right? They covet length, they covet athleticism, sure. They want dogs on their offensive line, guys who are athletes, but also are have the frame to be able to have SEC caliber size, but also can want to bury people, play with that nastiness that you look for. Like, we kind of have an idea at a lot of these positions what they look for. But I just thought it was interesting because he brought up the tight ends, and they were talking about the importance of that position and Max Sutter, specifically. And, he said, I think what we try to do at tight end is have a variety of different body types and different skill sets in the room. Definitely want to have the wide body type, your inline, hand in the dirt guys. And then you also want to have guys that are hybrid and can do both. And then if you can find a true H, then that's a luxury. But our biggest thing is just having people who have different skill sets and roles, so we're never caught without. If you get too caught up in the recruiting, watching guys catch passes and run touchdowns, then you look up and you don't have anybody who can block at the point of attack. Those guys are valuable. And, I think he painted it perfectly. And it's something that we try to explain to our listeners. I'm sure you guys do as well. That is exactly what they've been recruiting. Like, I think all of them bring a certain level of balance, but like a Caleb Edwards, he's like a big body, true inline guy, has some pass catching upside. Marshall Pritchett feels more like a move player, but he's added a ton of size. I think he can do he'll be able to do the inline stuff a little bit more as he progresses. And I think like he'll be like a plus I'm not saying from a receiving standpoint necessarily, even though he's got receiving upside, but from like being more viewed as a receiving first type of tight end, similar to a Josh Cuevas, I could see him growing and developing into a better blocker than Cuevas. So, you got that. And then Max Sutter is like, he's the definition of all this. I mean, he has the athleticism that you look for at the position. He's played a lot of different spots on the high school level, where you say, okay, if we can get him in and really put, he's 6'5", he's 230 pounds. If you can add mass, which when you look at what they did with Marshall Pritchett, it's like, Sutter's going to be 250 before next season. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that right now. And it's tough because you got to learn not only to separate from SEC defensive backs, cornerbacks, or second level defenders, and you have to learn how to block SEC caliber defensive linemen and edge rushers when you play tight end. Same thing when you transition from college to the NFL. It's why you don't really always get a massive impact from that position in year one. But at the same time, a guy like Max Sutter, I love what Courtney Morgan said as far as the level of detail and what they're looking for. The fact that the blocking element remains an important aspect of what they look for at that position. But then also just looking at how Sutter fits into that, he is like the best of both the Y and H, skill sets. And so when you bring that type of balance in this Kalen DeBoer, Ryan Grubb offense, I do think he's got tremendous upside for the future.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think you talk about that length. That seems to be kind of a trend with this class. You look at the guys, there's a lot of length. They do need some size, that, girth, let them get in there in the weight room. But not a lot of the one thing that's not getting talked about, the attribute, is versatility. You can tell Kalen DeBoer, this staff, they covet versatility. You can see it on today's squad. I think it was you, Clint, that kind of brought up Bray Hubbard and how you could possibly see him moving to linebacker. Yeah, I mean, he can play safety, he can play linebacker. You start looking at Xavier Griffin, for instance, super versatile guy. We look at this Tyrell Miller, that the JUCO offensive lineman, could play guard, tackle. Malik Franklin, the new the one surprise we did have, the 3-star edge out of Daphne. The kid's got great length, multi-sport athlete. I think he plays basketball, does track and field, all that stuff. But he can do a lot for you, very raw. But those are the two things, man. They all have a ton of length and they can do different things. And that, dude, that's very, very valuable for Alabama moving forward, because they're going to ask them to do it. Look at Caden Proctor. They're going to ask them to do a lot of different stuff, man. And that's just the nature of this offense. But Max Sutter, I think will be, I don't want to call him a gem because he's a highly touted recruit, but when you start looking at Sedarian Morgan, Xavier Crowell, he maybe doesn't get the hype as those guys, but I think he's one we'll look back on in a couple of years and go, that was a good one.
Well, he was a top 100 recruit before. Yeah. He was ranked, I think, number 99 last time I'd checked. He only fell to 110 as far as the rival industry rankings, but Rivals in particular went from having him as the number 145th overall player to number 225, the number 6 tight end to the number 11 tight end. I don't know what, and that happens, even though everybody calls it the Bama bump, and this doesn't happen with Bama. It certainly does. And this is a perfect example. Yeah. I would love to know, and it's tough. Charles Power or whoever is doing these evaluations, I think it might be more than just Charles Power now, but you'd love to pick his ear and just see the logic or thought process behind it, because I'm sure there's something that he's seeing. But he doesn't have time to do that with everybody when he's dropping rankings. Everybody's website, the Bama website, the Auburn, and I'm not even with on 3 anymore, so it's not like I would get that kind of detail anyways. But it is interesting how, because when I watch him, I definitely thought he was a top 100 caliber player. Yeah. I was very surprised to see that he had dropped when I went to check a few days ago. His signing day was coming up, and I'm like, I had all these rankings kind of listed out from before, 3-4 months ago. Let's see where some guys are at now compared to then. Mm-hmm. That was one that I was a little bit surprised by, but I'm telling you, Xavier Crowell, Max Sutter, I feel like both of those two guys, Sutter, it's going to be a lot more difficult. And you have 2 true freshmen who are already contributing at tight end. Part of that's injury. We don't know what's going to happen with Danny Lewis. He's a redshirt junior. Really, I don't even know how many games he's played in this year, but maybe he could even get a medical red shirt and still have 2 years of eligibility if he probably really wanted to. But I don't know what his plans are or what they plan to do with him. So maybe, Sutter might not have this clear, easy path to playing time, but I just think his skill set and the way that I do think he's going to get the Marshall Pritchett treatment. Pritchett, he was 215, 220. He was even lighter coming out, but they stacked some weight on him pretty quickly. I don't think he played his best against Auburn. It was a high pressure moment. Fully expecting to get better. Coaching staff really likes him, likes both those two young tight ends. Mm-hmm. But, I do think that that's going to be a position to monitor, because when that position is at its best and it's not this, run heavy, run blocking, grouping like CJ Dupree and Robbie Oots.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like Cuevas brings a ton from yards after the catch and reliability in the passing game. And he has improved as a blocker. He's not a liability in that area, but the more true balance that you get with multiple players, where you can go the 12 personnel and get that, kind of like to an extent what Georgia does, where their tight ends can be, I say, effective blockers. One of them's not, but you get my point, where the more balance you have at that position, the better you're going to be. And I just think right now, Alabama, not only have they recruited more of the inline blocking types, the Jay Lindsays that are not great pass catchers, they don't ever want to be without tight ends who can block or a tight end who can catch.
Sure.
But the more balanced players you have at that position, the better. Let's talk a little bit about the defense, because I'm also really excited about that side of the football. Ton of length, man. I mean, between Nolan Wilson, Corey Howard, Malik Franklin, who you mentioned, a lot of length there. And then, and I guess we'll start with the defensive line, because that's the one that everybody wants to talk about. Here's my question, because I'm looking at this, and this is why, you talk about positions that maybe didn't get addressed. Zay Hall is going to be an off-ball linebacker. Is he a guy that they expect to come in and be a contributor or help fill out the depth from day one? I don't know. He's a lower-ranked guy. I do think he's got a lot of size and ability, really good athlete. Still think he's got some things to work on, but I'm looking at, like, I was taking kind of a look at everything, and I see the Wolf position right now. They're losing Jamarian Latham. They haven't had him all year anyway, so that's not going to be anything that they're not already used to. But Yanze Pierre, Quay Russaw, Noah Carter, and Justin Hill. And a lot of people are saying, hey, do you move Quay to off-ball linebacker because you got Yanze Pierre? That's fine, but then that would leave you just with three Wolves, unless you played like an Xavier Griffin at Wolf, which, the 5-star freshman, very talented, has the ability to play inside or out. So I wouldn't hate that, but I just think that he is very Jahad Campbell-esque as far as the versatility. You're going to see him line up on the edge some, but I think he will probably be at his best as an off-ball linebacker. So, you're looking at that and you're saying, okay, you might end up being a little bit short with the Wolves. But then some people have suggested maybe a Jamarian Matthews might play Wolf. I think he's just gotten too big. I think the frame, he's going to be able to hold a lot more weight. And I just think he's a bandit, and really even beyond that. Like, I could see them kind of pulling. I'm not saying he's Jonathan Allen. I'm not going that far. But I am saying that this guy brings a lot of that same versatility where, Jonathan Allen was a 290-pound guy who could really play out there on the edge and be an athlete out there on the edge, but then was a complete game wrecker on the interior. He plays on the inside now in the NFL. This defensive line or defensive front is really intriguing to me, because a lot of people have been like, oh, you didn't add a ton of size. You didn't add any sort of massive 300-plus pound guy. They added athletes with length at those positions, and they're going to put weight on them, where they're going to be, Jeremiah. It's a bunch of Jeremiah Beamans. It's a bunch of guys who are coming in at 260 pounds. Next thing you know, they're sitting up there at 290, 295, 300, 310, 315. I'm telling you, Corey Howard, Nolan Wilson's one that I think, like, I like this defensive front group that they've been able to accumulate.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do too. A lot of people in our circles, everybody's concerned with the defensive line and the linebacking position. But Alabama quietly has addressed it pretty well in this class. And no, they're not going to get the top guys at every one of these positions. But Kalen DeBoer held a presser just right before you and I started recording, and he said, "Look, size and length, right? Well, they've got the length, right? It's up to the strength and conditioning coach to handle the size part, like you're talking about. And if what we saw, the trend, have you saw Jam Miller 2 seasons ago, and then this season, I mean, yeah, Alabama's not going to have any problem putting weight on these guys, the guys that they need them to. You talked about Xavier Griffin. I think Xavier Griffin is probably, to me, he's he's the headliner of this class. I'm really excited about the kid. Fantastic human being, him, his mother, great folks. A lot of people are going to be lobbying to see him early next year. Keep in mind, I'm not sure when his birthday is. I know when we recorded with him, he was still only 16. So he's an early out. Yeah. Yeah. Same thing with Crowell. He's forgoing his senior year. And so a lot of these kids are pretty young. But yeah, man, I don't see any problem getting the size needed. Nolan Wilson is one I was really excited about too. I was nervous there for a little bit. Miami made a really hard push for him when he went down there to visit earlier in the season. I was like, I don't know who it is that says it all the time, but follow the visits. And, that one made me nervous, but Todd hung on, and he is going to be, he's going to be a wrecker at some point, man. It's just a question of when, I think, Clint. It's not if, it's when.
Well, when you look at a lot of these guys, I can see where people would freak out. Like Corey Howard, from the way he looks right now, being 6'6", 260 pounds, roughly 262 pounds, I think is the exact. He looks like he'll be a bandit. You look at Nolan Wilson, 6'4", 252, whatever it is. He looks like he's going to be a bandit. Jamarian Matthews, he's only, I think just a shade under 6'3", he's 250 pounds. Some people say, hey, he could probably play Wolf. He does not have the fluidity, or, you don't want him dropping into coverage a ton. I'm not saying he can't, hold up a little bit at that position, but just everything that it requires. You don't want him lining up off the ball, doing some of the things that you ask of the Wolf. So I see bandit. And then I see a guy who, like I said, I could see him putting on substantial weight. I could see him being 290 pounds pretty quickly and being a guy that you use all up along your defensive front. That's one that I would say is a sneaky early contributor for Alabama, despite the fact that, and this is the other element that I wanted to talk about with this group, because right now, you think Tim Keenan, oh, that's a big loss.
Yeah.
LT Overton, big loss.
Yeah.
But then you start looking at what they actually still have. And then you got Jordan Renaud, you got Keon Keeley, who's starting to come on. You got, Cavante Henry, who is a guy who I think is flashed. I mean, I really liked him as a B and C gap player, a B and C gap disruptor on the JUCO level. Love the mass and size that he added. So I really think he's going to be able to provide something from a pass rushing perspective. But then you start looking at James Smith, and Jeremiah Beeman's going to be coming back, and London Simmons, and Edric Hill, and Steve and Boomwa. What's he going to end up looking like? And Isaiah Faga, that's another one that has been in the rotation. And then you start looking at some of these guys, and it's I don't really think that they need the massive bodies immediately. I think that they're going to, from a strength and conditioning standpoint, they're going to give them plenty of time to get in there, get bigger, get stronger. But when you start with the very athletic base, one of the things about Jeremiah Beeman is they were saying for a guy who was 312, 314 pounds, whatever he ended up finishing at, really good athlete still. And I think that that's something that they really, covet, but then also just having that length, being able to really create some problems with those longer offensive linemen. It's really, from a versatility standpoint, going to be beneficial. Kamarian Johnson is one that is just, from a body type standpoint, he doesn't look just physically incredible, but he's a monster, man. I mean, he's very disruptive. Man. I think a lot of his ranking, if you actually look at the production and the disruption, he should be ranked probably a lot higher. I think that there's something that where you look at it and he just doesn't look like he'd be that dude. And I think that probably kind of holds back his ranking a little bit. He should be ranked higher, in my opinion. But I mean, Nolan Wilson got the inside out versatility. All these guys got versatility. The fact that we're talking about some of them, a lot of them having bandit types of builds, I think they're going to get a lot of these guys bigger and play them as 3 techs, maybe some 1 techs. But I think that this defensive front, and the way they're building it, a lot of people are concerned. I'm not. I see the vision both from an immediate, 2026 and beyond. I mean, and if you end up needing something that you don't have, you can always go to the transfer portal. But I actually really like how they've constructed this defensive line.
Yeah. And I think Bama will. I think they will go to the transfer portal and maybe get a guy or two. But you're absolutely right, man. The name of the game this cycle so far has been length and versatility, and it's on full display. You want a guy that can do multiple things. Hey, look, let's be honest. We're paying these players now. You might as well get the most bang for your buck, right? So I want a guy who can do multiple things, who I can line up in different places on the field. And I mean, it hasn't hurt us so far this year. Alabama's defense has been as advertised, as far as I'm concerned. So
and they've done it without necessarily having this bona fide first round disruptive game wrecking defensive line. Like Tim Keenan's good. LT Overton's been good, who could end up being a first rounder. He is disruptive, but he's not like just this complete game wrecker.
Yeah.
I mean, you just look across the board and a bunch of really good players. You're getting good play, but everybody thought like, hey, you don't have the Deron Paynes or the Jonathan Allens or the Ashawn Robinsons or the Jerron Reeds and a lot of those players. But I mean, I think that you do have a bunch of guys who went to playing in the NFL for a long time.
Sure.
And they give you very steady, very reliable snaps. I mean, I think that's the name of the game as far as their interior defensive line.
Absolutely. And that's what you're getting. That's what you're getting in these recruiting classes. Corey Howard, the 3-star defensive lineman, you could look at him as kind of like a supplemental piece if you want to, but I agree with you, Clint. I think this is the kind of guy who can get in there and at some point, really contribute, again, those evaluations that this coaching staff is doing. I'm over the moon with this class, man. You could look at the 5 stars. Sure. Everybody gets excited about those names, but when you really start looking at these other guys, this is a solid recruiting class, man. It really is. And as college football evolves, recruiting evolves, you're going to see more and more of these 3-star guys on rosters because you can't build rosters that are stacked completely with only 5s and 4s anymore. And look, man, just because you leave college as a 3-star doesn't mean your sophomore or junior year, you leave high school as a 3-star doesn't mean your sophomore and junior year you're going to, you're playing like a 3-star. So I have a problem with fans, not a problem with fans, but I have a problem with the mentality of fans who just don't trust this coaching staff right now in terms of their evaluations. It's shown, it's popped already this year. We've seen a lot of young guys come in and be difference makers. Dijon Lee Jr., don't even get me started with that kid. There's no reason not to trust at this point. And they know what they're doing. They definitely know what they're doing. And it's showing everywhere, man. The offense last year, the offensive line class was fantastic. This year, they're supplementing it. You bring in Chris Booker, who I'm really excited about.
Really excited.
Dowdy, obviously, Bear Fretwell. Anybody named Bear playing in Alabama should be excited about. But yeah, it's great. I'm excited to see how they do supplement it with the transfer portal. But yeah, I mean, they'll go and they'll be active, but honestly, I think it'll just be for depth at this point.
Well, I could, with the offensive line specifically, and I said we were going to talk about that, and then I really wanted to get to the defense, and so I jumped the gun there.
Yeah, you're good.
So we'll go back and discuss that a little bit. I do think it would be awesome, and I actually am starting to think with the way Parker Brailsford's banged up right now when it's crunch time, and they maybe he's a lot closer to 200% by the time if Alabama makes the playoffs, which they're in very good shape to do. Maybe he'll be able to get back into form. But I'm really hoping that he comes back. I don't think Proctor is. I think Proctor should come back too. I think he should play guard. He's not going to listen to me. Totally understand it. Go make your money. You will make some money. Sure. There's no doubt. I do think he'll have a little bit of a hard time as far as, what I see Evan Neal. And I thought at the time that Evan Neal was just so far and away with where Caden Proctor is currently at. Caden Proctor is a really good player for Alabama, and Alabama could certainly use him. And they are very fortunate to have him. I'm saying that when Evan Neal was at Alabama, I would have never thought that he would have struggled with the edge speed that he has on the NFL level and had to move, inside the guard. And then he just hadn't really been a dude or a player in there as well. It's been very strange, kind of similar to DJ Fluker. That's another big body guy who started off at tackle, was drafted as a tackle on the NFL level, ended up moving inside the guard, did have a couple of good years. Don't get me wrong, but James Carpenter was a tackle at Alabama, moved inside the guard. I just think that's going to be Caden Proctor. We'll have to wait and see. I mean, right now NFL teams are desperate for tackle help. But I do think that the fact that he struggles with edge speed on, just playing in the SEC, I think that's going to be an even bigger issue on the NFL level. But with Parker Brailsford, I mean, if you could get him back, that would really solidify a lot for me. Because I think Jackson Lloyd is going to end up being a really good player at left tackle. That's an uncertainty. I wouldn't be shocked if they went out and they signed at least one bona fide tackle to say, hey, come in, let's have you compete with Jackson Lloyd, give yourself some depth. That would be one that I'm not really seeing. interior guys. Maybe a center if you do lose Parker Brailsford. I think Will Sanders is a potential solution there. Jimmy's brought that up. I do think that Joe Ionata is a very underrated player. I think Mal Waldrop, when they signed him as a 3-star recruit, thought he was much better than a 3-star ranking. Not saying he should have been super highly rated, but I just thought he was better than a 3-star. So, I mean, the interior, I think, is in pretty good shape, assuming that Wilkin Formby continues to make that transition and continues to be comfortable. I think Will Sanders is a solution in there. I would like for Ola Salinen to be an interior player. Think he's got a lot of potential. Like you said, love Chris Booker, excellent puller, very Will Sanders-esque in the sense that he comes in a little bit undersized, but ultra athletic, ultra nasty. And you love when those guys pull and get out in space. They love burying people and really being tone setters. And I just think that they're both the perfect fit for what Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb wants to do offensively. So maybe they end up going with an interior guy, but I just think right now, Michael Carroll, I would love for him to be on the interior. I think he would be better there. So maybe if you went out and you signed a tackle, you say, okay, come in, compete with Jackson Lloyd. If Jackson Lloyd ends up being that dude, whether it be a right tackle or left tackle, I would assume it would be left tackle, but I could be wrong. Okay. Maybe you can go over there and Michael Carroll can kick inside where we really would like to have him, and you upgrade you're in one of those interior positions and you end up getting a quality player at tackle. That would, probably be the route that I would take. I don't know if that's what they're going to do. I'm speculating, but this offensive line, it's been a huge point of contention for several years for Alabama fans. The frustration has absolutely been there and it's been justifiable. But at the same time, I'm looking at these players and Dowdy, he's going to be a guy who is it Dowdy or Doty? I think it's Doty.
I've always said Dowdy, but it could be.
I think it's like dough and then T. I don't know. Yeah. I think it's Doty.
We'll say Doty.
Yeah, but he's a guy like when I watch him, I understand why he's a late bloomer. He kind of, when you put on the tape, you immediately knew this guy can play all 5 positions. In my opinion, he's got the athleticism. Once again, plays with the nastiness. I think he's right where he needs to be from a recruiting ranking standpoint. Really like that addition. And then with Tyree Miller and Bear Fretwell, just 2 guys who bring the athleticism element. They're kind of bring that nastiness that you want. Still need to get stronger. Both of them do. But I also like the developmental side. And I don't think that they're looking if they get an offensive lineman that they really want to help them in year one, or I say in year one, in 2026, they're going to do that through the transfer portal. They're not expecting anybody to come in here based off of who's coming back and stuff and expecting them to step up and take a starting job from day one. But, that is going to be something to keep an eye on with the offensive line for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's just, you brought up Alabama's kind of contention with offensive line play since 2020. It just really hasn't been what we're accustomed to. I think some of that is just the evolution of the game. And then, now I kind of talked about this when we first started, but you're kind of seeing this Alabama influx, and it's going to be exciting to watch that line evolve with these guys that they just brought in this class, maybe how they supplement it in the portal. And I really think you'll start to see it. I think it's Brooks Austin who said he feels like Kalen DeBoer's still a little uncomfortable, and you'll see the comfortability in about 15 to 18 months. And I agree with them 100%.
I agree with
that. And this is why, next class will really kind of solidify that offensive line. They'll have their guys in there, those body styles, the playing styles that they want, like you were kind of mentioning. And so, but yeah, I mean, even with the adversity that the offensive line has faced this year for Alabama, you've had the guys already. Michael Carroll, you brought up, who's had significant playing time and has looked pretty phenomenal. Recognizing that he's a freshman, he had it's gone viral, but he had one play in the Iron Bowl where he just pushed a D lineman. I mean, or it may have been linebacker. I don't remember.
It was a nickel corner. I thought it was an edge when I was watching it live. He buried him. Yeah. I've watched the kid do that in high school. So absolutely a fantastic job along the offensive line too. And I don't want to sit here and blow smoke up everybody's skirt and just say, this is the best class of all time. But at the same time, understanding where Alabama is in this process, understanding the scope of college football and how different it is. This isn't 2015 where Nick Saban can just go get every 5-star he wants.
The game has changed. NIL has changed that. The transfer portal has changed that. But it's about as impressive of a job as you could expect out of this staff on really everywhere, man. I don't see an area where Alabama is in serious need. Maybe people would say place kicker, but
and that's something to address. That's actually really fair. But I would say really the only one to me is I think that adding Zay Hall is fine.
Yeah.
And I say fine, like I'm saying, like that is definitely a potential solution for the future.
Sure.
But the fact that like Xavier Griffin, I'm also viewing him as an off-ball linebacker. I would have liked a true wolf. I would have liked to have seen a guy who and that probably, I'd even think a guy like Tank Jones, I know that kind of he wanted to play wolf, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think he was too keen on playing bandit, even though I mean, it's like, I don't know why you wouldn't. Like if I were you and based off of what you do well, I'd rather play bandit than wolf, because wolf is going to ask you to drop back into coverage a lot more.
Sure.
It's going to ask you to play off the ball. It's like you just put your hand in the dirt and go play football when you're playing bandit, like from a 2-point stance, 3-point stance. And yes, you'll occasionally see the bandit drop. We saw Tim Keenan drop on Saturday. Like it, I mean, this defense, they're going to keep offensive lines guessing a little bit, but it's like LT Overton has every opportunity to get to the quarterback. And, there were some other guys in the class that I kind of wondered, okay, how does like a Jamarian Matthews, how does he fit in with a Tank Jones? But Tank probably could have played wolf. But the fact that they didn't, and maybe Xavier Griffin ends up being a guy. I just think right now, when you look at what they're losing, Deontay Lawson, Justin Jefferson, Nakai Hill-Green, you've got Caden Jones, you've got QB Reese. I actually think those are two pretty good options. Sure. A lot of people have pushed this idea for Quay Russaw to bump it off the ball and help out there. That is certainly a possibility. But once again, you got to have a wolf if that happens. Maybe you put Xavier Griffin out there as a freshman and you play Quay Russaw as an off-ball guy. I don't really know. But then you got like Luke Metz and Daryl Johnson and Abdul Sanders, Sanders. That trio as well. I mean, I do think they got some options. So I'm not saying that they necessarily like have to go get somebody, but I just think right now, based off of the type of impact that you've been getting from that position in 2025 and really in a lot of ways 2024 as well, with Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson, and then of course Justin Jefferson coming on as a strong RB3. They've really liked rotation at that position, and they've really liked getting a lot, big impact. And so, I'm not saying that those players can't be big impact. I just think right now, maybe it's Quay. The reason that I had suggested Bray Hubbard potentially end up making a move is you look at the safety depth and stuff, and I'm thinking, Keon Sabb, Bray Hubbard, Red Morgan is a Husky option, Zay Mincy, Drake Kirkpatrick Jr., Ivan Taylor, Jaira Edwards is a player who I think, and we'll get to him here in just a few minutes, but like that's a player who I think can come in and make an immediate impact, whether it be at safety or at Husky. So it's like, I mean, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, possibly 7 guys between 3 positions, the 2 safeties and the Husky. And it's like, if you have that kind of depth, then a guy like Bray Hubbard, who has done really well playing up near the line of scrimmage, has played some dime linebacker really against like the 12 personnel offenses like Georgia. They've put him up there, and he's kind of played a strong side linebacker, like a 4-3 linebacker type of player, done extremely well doing that. I think that he could not only handle that role, but I think he would thrive in it.
Sure.
Granted, a lot of people really like him at safety, and I like him at safety. So it's not that it's not. And if that's what NFL teams want from him, they think that he's going to be, but if he's going to be like a day 3, a round 4, a round 3, even a round 2 guy at safety, but they're saying, hey, you go from being just a good athlete at safety to being an elite athlete at linebacker, and you can kind of emerge as like a day 1 type of talent, then maybe he elects to make the move. But that was just a random looking to maybe fill a hole, a solution with a lot of bodies. It's possible he might not even be back, and it's possible that the coaching staff wouldn't want to touch him. And if they didn't, I wouldn't be upset with that. We're just looking at possible solutions. But going back to this freshman group, man, Jaira Edwards, to me, speaking of which, I mean, the physicality, the energy, like very versatile. We talk about versatility. You were talking about that earlier. Up front with all these guys, it's versatile pieces up front. You look at Xavier Griffin, can play off ball, can play on ball, versatility, chess pieces, move them around, keep offenses guessing, third level with a lot of the players that they have, like Jordan Edmonds, I wouldn't be shocked at all if he ended up playing safety at some point in his career. I also think he can survive just like Dijon Lee as a corner. So I really like the fact that he's starting out there. But Jair Edwards, another chess piece that, I mean, you can put him in the, at Husky, you can put him at safety, an overhang, too high, single high, man coverage, zone coverage, let him be a heat-seeking missile coming downhill as a blitzer, all of these things. I think he is a piece that is going to really elevate this Kane Wommack defense. Easily one of my top 2 or 3 favorite players in this class.
Yeah, I'm with you. He reminds me a lot of Malachi Starks. To be honest,
yeah,
with you.
Yeah.
He's violent. He's very aggressive. That kind of reaction to trigger downhill is there. He can do that quickly. And then like you said, he's again, man, we keep using the same words. Interestingly enough, length and versatility. He's versatile. He's a chess piece that you can kind of move all over the place. I said earlier that I felt like Xavier Griffin was a crown jewel of this class. And Xavier, if you're watching this, I love you, man. But just kind of, I might want to backtrack on that statement. Xavier Griffin's great. Jair Edwards at his position is that's a huge get. It's a very, very big get for Alabama back there in that secondary. Obviously, I think the Tide, even under this new regime, is going to take a lot of pride in their secondary. And they've got the pieces to just continue being a pretty dominant unit back there. They're so deep too, man, moving forward. And then you bring in a kid like this and but just to go back, man, I like what I really do like what you're talking about with Bray Hubbard. Cause it kind of goes back to what we're talking about with Courtney Morgan earlier, where he says, they've got their pot, they've got their pool for retention. So if Hubbard does get a day 3 grade and this staff wants to try to move him, down closer to the line of scrimmage and say, hey, man, we can, here's a little bit of money. We've got it. It's here. You know why it's there, guys? Because we didn't sign 35 guys in our 2026 class. No, but yeah, Edwards, dude, his recruitment was so quiet too. He's just,
it was
kind of like an assassin, man. I'm really excited to see him in Crimson. He's got a very, very bright future, definitely playing on Sundays. And like I said, it reminds me a lot of Malachi Starks.
Yeah, I really like that comp. I mean, the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah. And I feel like right now, and this is something that I brought up on Twitter earlier, number one, it's like, okay, where does he play? Does he play Husky or does he play safety? I think in the early stages, first of all, Alabama has not had what I would view as the ideal Kane Wommack Husky since he's gotten to Alabama. They played Devontae Smith there. He's kind of a corner, had played safety, 6 foot, 205 pounds, the closest thing from a size standpoint. But Deshaun Jones, 6 foot, 190 pounds. Red Morgan, scrappy, certainly has a Husky heart. There's no doubt.
Sure,
and I think he's going to continue to do well there. Don't get me twisted. But, being 6 foot, 185 pounds, sometimes that size limits, because that Husky, that it's really the same thing as the star or the Husky, Nick Saban or Kane Wommack's defense. That becomes a strong side linebacker replacement in a lot of instances. You got to be able to hold up against the run. You got to be physical, come downhill, but also have the ability to cover guys, whether it be in zone or man coverage. It takes kind of not a unicorn because you got to continuously pump those guys out. And I think that right now they like the fact that they get a nickel coverage type of player while also not sacrificing a ton from a physicality standpoint. You sacrifice something a little bit from a size standpoint with a Deshaun Jones or a Red Morgan, but not from a physicality standpoint. So there's a difference. Sometimes that ends up mattering. But like Jair Edwards, he can be 6'2". He's already 11 pounds or 12 pounds. Big body guy, has the length. He would bring more length than they've had at that position. He would bring more size kind of out the gate. I could totally see him being a 215, 220 pound, 6'2", Husky, being just a complete game wrecker for Alabama. Yeah. And so, you look at like Keon Sabb potentially being back, maybe Bray Hubbard, Zay Mincy. And even if Bray Hubbard moves positions or leaves for the NFL, you'd still have Zay Mincy ready to step up. You'd still have Ivan Taylor, who probably is going to want to, elevate and play as that safety 3, maybe fill in for or overtake that role for Zay Mincy, who would be elevated in that instance. Drake Kirkpatrick Jr. could end up being back. We'll have to wait and see, but I still feel like Jair Edwards probably that's not the clearest path to playing time for him. Husky, on the other hand, you lose Deshaun Jones. Red Morgan would be sitting in front of you. Maybe they would want to play Drake Kirkpatrick Jr. there. He's played there before and done pretty well, even though I think the length, like he's not overly long. So I like him personally at safety. I think Jair Edwards can end up being the player who ends up being that second Husky and maybe getting quite a bit of playing time, similar to what Red Morgan did as a freshman last season. So, I mean, I do think he's got a pretty clear path to playing time, and I think just the way he plays, it's going to end up being he's going to be a dude. And Xavier Griffin, love the ball hawking ability, the sideline to sideline range, the length, being 6'3". I don't know if he's going to come in and immediately contribute because I think he's got to add mass and size. You know, Jahad Campbell did. You know, like Jahad Campbell, I mean, he didn't play at all, really, or he didn't play a lot his freshman year. I do think by the time they played Kansas State in the Sugar Bowl, he actually ended up playing some and was ready to kind of take that step and help out. But it took him an entire season, pretty much. And so with Xavier Griffin, I really hope that he can contribute. Maybe they can find some specific things that they ask him to do to help out on defense. But his number one goal is just as soon as you step on campus, you get with the strength and conditioning staff and you say, get me big and get me strong. Because the sooner you get to that point, the sooner you're going to contribute. This guy, I mean, I think Alabama knocked it out of the park with the 5 stars. Sometimes I see a 5-star and I'm like, you know, I don't really see the 5-star like they do. I think, I mean, Xavier Crowell, Jair Edwards, and Xavier Griffin, all 3 are dynamite players that are going to be so much fun to watch. And even the CD Morgans and some of those players, the Nolan Wilson, Jordan Edmonds, like the players that kind of fill out of that 5-star range, I think they're all going to end up being really good players for Alabama too. So I love the top, but just like I did last year, I mean, Mal Waldrop was a player I was high on. Luke Metz was a player I was high on. Marshall Pritchett, like these lower rated 4-stars, these 3-stars, loved what they all brought to the table. So, I really like how this group turned out. Do you have anything else? I know I've taken up a lot of your time.
Yeah, no, you're fine, dude. I would like to point out one fact overall, one general fact here about this class. You know, when Kalen DeBoer came in after Nick Saban retired, he had an impossible job, and not just on the football field, but in recruiting. And there was a lot to do made about him losing the state of Alabama in terms of recruiting. Kalen DeBoer and his staff put, you know, those rival recruiting programs on notice this class. They dominated this outside of Tank Jones. They dominated the state of Alabama. You know, Braylon Womack ends up at Mississippi State, but by the time he comes available from Auburn, there's really no room for him in Bama's class. It tells me not only that, they go into Georgia and pull guys like Griffin out of there. Man, this staff, a lot of people called him Husky Harsin, man. That's all I'm gonna say.
It's a big swing and miss there.
Wow. He put a lot of people on notice with this class.
And you know what? When it comes to this side of it, I do want to give Kalen DeBoer a lot of credit. You know, and I know because he's the captain of the ship, and he's the one that puts everybody in the position to be successful. But Courtney Morgan is the architect here,
100%.
And so I mean the coaching staff. I mean, and I love how DeBoer was given. You know, I think was it Jet Tomala that I think he gave credit for. You know, Nick Sheridan credit for discovering him and really getting in on him, and then Tayden Kawa was a guy who Ryan Grubb had kind of seen. They had gone out there to see another player and stuck around and kind of built a relationship with him, and that ended up paying off in a major way. So this is all the coaching staff. Everybody's putting in work, but Courtney Morgan, I always believe in giving him his flowers, because when you see the attention to detail, how he constructs things that make sense from a financial standpoint, from a developmental standpoint. They have guys waiting in the wings. They have more of the long-term guys they're looking at from a developmental standpoint, and you trust your staff to get that development out of them. You have the guys who can come in and immediately contribute as freshmen. They do a really good job in the transfer portal of filling holes and not overspending and going to get the top guys, but getting guys who are going to contribute and fill a specific role or need that's going to help Alabama win football games, and then just being able to kind of stack that talent right there at the top as far as the high school recruiting. When you see a dude at the top that fits what you're looking for from a character standpoint and a talent standpoint, you go get that player. Exactly. And they're willing to do that, but they're also really intelligent about it, and they build around it. And, you know, and they take care of their own. And I'm telling you right now, that is something that a lot of these schools, they don't realize is just, it's massive. It's just making sure that I think they even made a joke and they said someone ripped off a long touchdown and they're standing on the sidelines and they immediately think to themselves that just cost a few more NIL dollars that he did that.
Yeah.
But, that's how they view it. It's like, hey, he just made a huge play. We're going to take care of him. And that player trust that the coaching staff and Courtney Morgan, the support staff, is going to take care of him. And I think that having that trust is absolutely massive. So
absolutely, man.
Cotton, this has been fantastic. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you hopping on here with me. Hope we definitely need to do this again. I hope everybody enjoyed it for sure. And let everybody know where they can find you as far as your channel and Twitter and stuff.
Yeah, we're over on YouTube as well. Waaay Offsides. It's Waaay with 4 A's. 3's not enough. 5's too many. 4 just like in the word Alabama. You can find us we're on all social media platforms. We are also, but we're most active on X because, that's where it seems to be where everybody is. It's the Wild West over there. It's a good time. So you can find us there. There's 4 of us. So look us up, hang out with us. Promise you'll have a good time.
Perfect. Yeah, you guys do a great job. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. If you haven't already, I know I told you once already today, but get on over to robat.com. Use the promo code Crimson20 to get 20% off your order. And also get on over wherever you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, and search the Cover Crimson Podcast Network and hit that download or follow button. That would help us tremendously. Once again, Cotton, I appreciate you. Appreciate everybody else, and we will talk to you guys soon.